from our man Eugene, who said, I do remember WoW Chronicles were advertised as definitive lore books, not some Titan perspective. And the wording in the new Shadowlands lore book is about that Titan perspective. Quote, such blatant hubris is almost insulting. I don't mind retcons per se, but the speed of these retcons. Chronicle was created for Legion and already received multiple retcons, and I feel the Shadowlands book will be retconned at the beginning of the next expansion, as if there are some quarterly lore reviews. So what I'd say there is, I've seen some people think that retcon means retroactive contextualization. Retcon means retroactive continuity, and retcon is where actual facts change about past events to fit a future story or a current story.
Yeah, it'd be like saying Tyrion is still alive.
Yeah.
Even though he's dead and buried.
Yeah, that would be a pretty damn hard retcon. Yeah. So the thing with Grimoire of the Shadowlands is it's like technically it's not a retcon. It's not. It's a retcontextualization, but is it? Because it's basically saying this is a new perspective. Because it is overtly a Shadowlands, like a broker entity view on the universe. And the broker seems like a bit of an arrogant prick. So he totally believes all this Azerothian shit is very, very laughable and silly. Now that said, to a player who got really invested in Chronicle, when it was advertised as being the definitive lore book, they're going to see all these things and feel a little bit betrayed. So it doesn't have to be a technical hard retcon, but it can be a recontextualization that changes something away from the spirit in which somebody first engaged with it. And if you do that really, really, really well, then perhaps you have an M. Night Shyamalan movie ending that's good. But if you do that really, really badly, then you have an M. Night Shyamalan movie ending that is bad. And he definitely has more of the latter than the former, because it's really hard to recontextualize past events in a way that feels satisfying. And sometimes if you do past events, knowing you're going to recontextualize them, it can make them not be that satisfying when the player's actually going through them. So for me, I think it's Chronicle initially, or at least Chronicle Volume 1, it had the intent of codifying the lore. That is how they marketed it. I think if people are pretending that's not the case and saying that it was always intended to be a Titan spoiler, then that is just blatant living in one's own reality distortion field. That is false. That is false. The people who are saying that are basically lying, I don't know, to look cool or something. No, Chronicle is not as was first advertised. Once we get past that fact, we then see the Chronicles of Titan perspective. We then see Grimoire of the Shadowlands. Grimoire of the Shadowlands is a broker perspective on things. So they're really of a similar level, just that often when you're dealing with canon, the more, it's like the more recent thing is obviously the thing that's been written with a more contemporary, more recent purpose. Therefore, think about that one a little more. I mean, do I have Chronicle 3 here? No, I don't. Somewhere else, but
I can get it if you want.
I don't need to. No, it's just a prop. I call that stuff with Arthas. It took me sitting down and doing some hardcore diving through everything to make Chronicle mesh with Shadowlands.
Yeah.
And I did. Chronicle does mesh with Shadowlands. If you assume that Chronicle is a Titan perspective, it is a Azerothian, it's not literally a Titan perspective. That's actually a bad way to put it. It's an Azerothian history of what happened. I actually think it would be way better if Blizzard said, by the way, when we said Titan, we meant, forces of order, and you guys, you mortals, think about where the humans came from. You're kind of beings of order, right? So it would be better if they reframed it as that. If you frame it as that, then it's a human perspective. It's not a human, it's an Azerothian perspective, and nobody in Azeroth knew about the Jailer. Therefore, Chronicle makes sense. The stuff that basically is Arthas's POV in Chronicle makes sense because he's under the influence of, domination magic. So that's how you make all that stuff work. I think for people, though, that's obviously not, in some cases, not how that material was initially intended. It's not how it was initially sold. So I think anybody who is confused by somebody feeling confused or a bit betrayed at that, I think is just being willfully ignorant to make a point or to look smart or, some petty bullshit like that.
No, it is straight up drinking the Kool-Aid if you don't see the literal facts of history as how they were at the time. It's like you can look at something from a single point in time perspective and be correct, but if you start to factor in other perspectives of time, which you obviously can't, include the future in your perspective, but if you think about how people felt at the time and how they acted at the time, which, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to do if you're thinking of something on the spot versus, actually sitting down and thinking about it, especially if you haven't experienced that stuff before, if you're relatively, if you're coming into something fresh or something. But it is extremely valid. But you can see how people would make the silly mistake of ignoring past perspectives.
Yeah.
Which I think is the case for Chronicle, because I remember being super excited by these and being like, man, finally everything, we're going to see a little bit of an expansion into what the stuff we know, and seeing the cosmic chart for the first time. I was like, wow, this is so cool. This adds so much context to our world. And now I see a different version of it, and I'm just like,
It's like, does it make sense for the story and the current lore? Yes, absolutely it does. Is it a retcon? No. It's a recontextualization of past events that does not change. It's details being added to the world that change our perspective in past events.
Yeah.
It's not about whether people are angry about it being a retcon or not. I think that's just the language people use to express how they're feeling. Okay. It is far more just, yeah, we know you've done that. It's just not satisfying.
Yeah, it's
a storytelling thing.
It's kind of weird in that Chronicle was retconned, but not retconned in the context of the game. Chronicle was retconned in the context of our outside the game experience.
Oh, like how it was marketed, yeah.
Yeah, so that's where an actual retcon is, where we were said this is one thing, now it's not. Whereas I think that's okay in the sense of what do you call it? I think that's makes sense in a couple different ways.
Just seeing from the preface of this.
So anyway, it's reading hour with Michael. Trying to read some stuff out loud.
It's just I'm trying to find the bits.
Story time with Michael. What really happened to Medan? Is he real?
Yeah. So, writing this was an opportunity to unite the frayed story ends and smooth out the rough edges of this fictional history. Ultimately, this grand and super nerdy editorial undertaking gives us an amazing perspective on Warcraft's current themes and conflicts. And it's, yeah, I mean, that's basically it. They're just saying that this is codifying what happened. And, largely it did that and it still does that. It's just that there's been, there's it's not the full picture anymore.
Yeah.